Namaste and greetings. I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day 3 of UPLGYF Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program organized by IMPRI, Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. The chair for the program is Professor Manjula Bharathy ji, Professor, Center for Urban Policy and Governance, School of Habitat Studies, and Professor, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TIFF, Mumbai, Visiting Professor, IMPRI. The conveners for this course are Dr. Shomadip Chattopadhyay ji, Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar ji, Mr. Sameer Unhale ji, Mr. Arvind Unni ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources document in your email for your kind perusal. We will be providing videos of each session for flexible learning at your place and time. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A after each session. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Without further ado, let us begin with today's sessions. To begin today's session, I would like to hand over to Dr. Vaishali Singh, Research Program and Editorial Associate, IMPRI, for a presentation on essays and research article writing. Thank you, Vaishali ji. Over to you.
Thank you, Samprikta. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Today, in the session, we are going to delve into the research article writing aspects from idea to publication. If you move on to the next slide, please. Right. So the aspect of research article writing requires various stages, which I will delve into this PPT. First, researchers are required to identify a research idea. That includes identifying a topic of interest within your field of study. And based on the idea that you have conceptualized, make an abstract that should contain a brief background description, problem statement, why you are doing this research, and the major research questions that arise and will be addressed throughout your research. The other aspect of identifying the research is reviewing your existing literature, understanding what all has already been done with respect to the research and what all gaps are still persisting in your field area of research, or any of the controversies that you feel might be required to address in your research by exploring the already existing literature. Also, it will help you to formulate the research questions or the hypothesis that address the gaps in knowledge. And the second stage of your research article will require literature review. As mentioned, literature review is an important component of research writing because it helps you identify the research gap from the already existing literature in your research, based on your research. Which requires conducting a comprehensive literature review to understand the existing literature, theories, which is relevant to your topic. And also it helps you to identify the right methodology that you can adopt or you can explore to adopt in your research, or any of the theoretical frameworks, findings from previous studies. Also, when we are writing a literature review, it is advised to make an in-text citation of references from where you have taken the literature. We have provided an example, such as you provide the author's name and the year in which the publication was done, followed by a full reference that you can mention in the bibliography section at the end of the research writing article. Nowadays, since there's a lot of AI usage, it is also advisable to conduct your systematic research by taking help of such AI tools such as Sky Space literature mapping tools like Research Rapid. They help you to conduct your literature in a very systematic manner, and also to help you explore further more research that is there in your field. We can move on to the next stage. Right. The next stage is to identify and formulate the research design that the researcher is planning to conduct throughout the research, which includes identifying in the form of whether it will be a qualitative research, whether it will be a quantitative research, based on the research idea or the understanding and the gaps that the researcher has in mind, which includes defining the research objectives and aims based on the identified gaps, and also select appropriate research methods, which includes, as I said, qualitative, quantitative. Apart from this, there's experimental, observational approaches as well. Also, to develop a clear research design, including sampling techniques, data collection methods, and analysis procedure. Sampling methods based on whether it's a doctoral or non-doctoral research, empirical based. So obviously the sampling design will depend upon how a researcher wants to explore its research, which can always go from probability to non-probability sampling techniques as well. And data collection can vary from using tools such as survey, interviews, again based on the suitability of the researcher and its aims and objectives, along with the research questions that the researcher plans to address throughout the research. Then we have the data collection analysis stage, which is another crucial element because that is the true understanding of your research that come across from data collection analysis stage, where you are supposed to collect data using the chosen methodology and techniques, where you employ rigorous data analysis methods relevant to your research design and interpret the results in relation to your research questions or hypothesis. This is an important stage that researchers should keep in mind while they're writing the research article. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Then comes the writing the manuscript part. Once you have curated your identified your gap, literature review has been conducted by you, there's a proper research methodology that has been identified by you, and a proper data collection analysis has been done. Then comes the writing part of it, which is a manuscript. Which is follow the structural typical requirement by a targeted journal. Since it depends upon whether you're providing it for a dissertation purpose, whether it's a PhD thesis submission, or whether you're providing it to a journal article for publication. Obviously, the journal articles have various guidelines. It depends upon the journal that you have identified to get your research article published in. You're supposed to go through the guidelines and understand what is the layout of the particular journal, which can include introduction, methods, result, discussion, conclusion. It's a full layout in which they follow, and you're supposed to adhere to that guideline as well. So it's advisable for researchers to first explore the guidelines of the journal that they're aiming to get their paper published from. Also, you're supposed to write a clear and concise introduction that outlines your background, objectives, and significance of the study while you're writing your research article. And also describe the methodology in detail, including the participant selection, data collection, and analysis procedure, and present the results objectives using table, figures, and statistical wherever necessary for better understanding of the readers as well, and for better presenting your data. Also, it will help you to discuss the implications of your findings and the contribution to the existing literature. The gap that you have identified, you're supposed to address while you're writing the manuscript, and how your research has contributed to the existing literature that is already there in the field. Also, by concluding and summarizing the key findings from your research, limitations, and future research direction that you wish to explore, or further policymakers can also explore, that is supposed to be provided in the conclusion section. We can move on after the steps, yes. So when you're writing the research article, there are a few components that you're supposed to take into consideration. The layout that we typically talk about. When you write a typical dissertation or a PhD thesis, we typically follow this kind of approach. And when you're presenting a report, there's a particular layout that is required. So that layout particularly goes through like a title page is there. The very first page is the title page, where you include the title of your report. It includes your name, the date, the institution, organization you're affiliated to, and also it requires you to take permission from the institution to utilize their or to use their logo, graphics in their title page. Also, the next component of the layout includes the table of contents. which should provide expressly that what are the major headings that have been included in your research, along with the page number for easy navigation of the readers. Then, yes, an important component is the list of abbreviations used in your research. For example, if you have used the word WHO, which is the World Health Organization, and at the very first you have provided it World Health Organization and bracket WHO, then you're supposed to adhere that abbreviations have been used in between your research article. So you're supposed to mention all the abbreviations along with the full form in the list of abbreviations that you have used in your article. Then he has the list of tables and figures. Uh, while you're writing your manuscript, the tables and figures have a particular way of being addressed. You're supposed to number the table numbers that you're writing in a manuscript, because that will be utilized and used here along with the page number. For example, you have used a table. So you'll obviously mention table number 1, and you're going to mention table representing the respondents. And in the list of tables and figures, you're going to state table number 1, list representing list of representatives, and you're supposed to number it as well, in which page it is being mentioned, that table or that figure, so that when the readers are reading, it's easy for them to go and look at the table that you have used in your research article. Then comes an executive summary. It'll be basically a very brief summary of your objectives, methods, findings, recommendation in a very concise and engaging manner. And also the key highlights or takeaways from your research will addresses your research gaps as well. So it'll be very short executive summary. For example, for a quick read, sometimes when you are uploading in online journals, they don't allow access to the full journal, but an abstract can be utilized in that manner to go through that what the particular article addresses. For example, it will be helpful for other researchers to explore whether a particular research gap has been addressed as well or not. We can move on. Right. The very first comes the introduction part, where you provide an overview of the research problem that you are addressing in your research article, its significance, why it's important in your research area, why you are doing the study, the various research questions that you will be addressing while you're going to go through the research of your own, and also clearly state the objectives of your study and explain the relevance of action-based social science research in the context of your work. Then we have the literature review, as I have already covered in the previous part, which was the various stages of research article writing. And that in there's a particular component which I spoke about was literature review. So right after you completed your introduction part, you're supposed to complete your literature review. As I mentioned, you're supposed to go thoroughly with respect to the existing literature, and you're going to do a systematic literature based on the theme of your research, in which you're supposed to provide proper in-text citation and then a full citation in the bibliography section, or the endnote styles that is there, that ask you to follow. So kindly go through that. Yes, we can move on to the next one. Yeah. So next part that will be covered in your research article is the methodology, where you'll describe your research design in detail, that what research design you have adopted, including your approach. It can be qualitative, quantitative, mixed method approach, the data collection method that you have adopted, the various sampling strategy, how you have identified your sampling size, and so on and so forth. Also to justify your choices and explain how they align with the action-based social science research approaches. And also, you're supposed to detail any ethical consideration measures taken to ensure participants' confidentiality and informed consent. Specifically, since non-doctoral research requires you to engage with stakeholders, sometimes, not sometimes, but nowadays, it's very important to adhere to the confidentiality of the participants of your research. And for that, you're supposed to provide an informed consent form to the participants before you conduct the research, which shows the willingness of the participants to take part in your research, and also to ensure at your end to maintain their confidentiality, to not name them in your research article that you're writing, or anywhere in your appendix where you're going to attach your questionnaire or your answers to it. Kindly avoid using the names of the respondents in that case. The next comes the results part. where you present your findings and objectives using charts, tables, graphs, include, obviously, to make it more understandable for the readers, for your based on your research that you have done and the analysis that you have come across, and also to provide a detailed analysis of the data that links to the research objectives. So there are different methods, such as the correlation method is one of them, where you kind of address the research questions and the research objectives based on the correlation analysis that you have come across in your study. It is one of the examples that I'm giving, and also highlight any pattern, trends, or significant relations discovered. So that is something that come across, as I mentioned, correlation study helps you to understand such kind of relationships, or such kind of very minute things that come across in your research, and it plays a major role in your research as well. It can be part of your recommendation that can be utilized. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Yes, the discussion part is where you interpret and analyze your results in the context of existing theories and literature, and discuss the implications of your findings, the significance, and address any limitations of your study, and suggest areas for future research. Limitations obviously can be with respect to whether there was time constraint, whether there was a limitation with respect to getting access to those respondents, or there was some resistance coming from this one. Those are the kind of limitations you're supposed to mention in your research as well. For example, during COVID, researchers have shown their limitation as not the empirical aspect, going on field and conducting the research. So that came across as one of the limitations of study. Then comes the conclusion part, where you summarize the key findings, implication, contributions of your research, and restate the research objectives and how they were achieved with respect to both doctrinal and non-doctrinal aspect of the research. And then comes the recommendation part, where you can take few findings from your research based on what you have found out, and you can obviously put them in the form of recommendations as well, and give action-based research recommendations to practitioners, policymakers, researchers, uh, wherever you feel that more improvement can be made in your research, whether on policy or law related, based on obviously depends upon the particular research that the researcher is conducting. If we can move ahead, please. The references part. Now, references are very important because it helps further the researchers as well, where you have taken the research literature from. It helps other researchers also to explore. But other than that, it is very crucial because it avoids the plagiarism aspect. References are there because it's kind of lays out an idea of a particular field, and it is very important to give due recognition to those ideas when you're writing that research article. So they're usually citation styles that are provided by the respective journals or institutions. For example, APA, MLA, ILA is one of citation style, and we have seen Blue Book as well. So there are various citation styles. There are proper documents that are provided there for all sources cited in your report or wherever it's supposed to be asked, and include a comprehensive list of references. So yes, when you're writing your references, ensure that they are alphabetically aligned in the sense from A to Z, and that too with author's last name first. So when you're writing a research article, there are various in-text citations that you have provided. But when you come to references, there's a full list of all the references that you have mentioned, which will come in the reference list. It is supposed to be compiled alphabetically, as I said, along where you put your last name first. So again, that helps other researchers to explore the title, the full title, the author's name, the journal that is the literature has been published in, or the year, so and so forth. Such kind of information is in full to be added in the reference list. Then comes the appendix, which usually includes the additional material of your research, which includes your questionnaire, any of the law-based bill that you have taken into account if you're exploring any kind of legal aspect, to put it in that field. Also, interview transcripts and photographs, Apart from this, if you've incorporated any statistical approach, then coding and so and so forth, kind of extra details are supposed to be attached in your appendix part. So usually that is that creates a full research and rich information that is to be provided. If you can move. Yes. Also, once you have completed your the writing part of your manuscript, it is very important to go through and giving a revision to your manuscript for clarity, coherence, and accuracy. Also, to see that if any grammatical errors are there or there's any sentence formation that requires to be changed to improve the quality. Also, it is advisable to share it with your supervisors, colleague, mentors, experts to get due feedback, which can be incorporated by you to again enhance the quality of your writing, and revise it and then resubmit it. Usually, the journals that you submit they have a process of review where your manuscript is sent to the expert reviewers who provide a detailed review points to the author, and then the guideline, then the due feedback is provided, and they're supposed to incorporate those changes, and then the journal approves it for publishing. So it's a process that the authors are supposed to adhere to. Then comes the submission and peer review. As I mentioned, there's a proper process of peer review as well, or there's expert review. Once you have done that, again, I have mentioned that it depends upon the journal that you're applying for your submit your manuscript. So that goes through peer review, and experts in the field evaluate for quality, originality, and significance. If you can move ahead with the next slide, please. Yes, then comes a publication. As I said, once you have made the due changes to your manuscript after incorporating changes given by the reviewer, the publishers, they move ahead with the formatting, and it's given to the editorial team, where after once it is finalized, it goes through the publication process. As I mentioned, it is important to adhere to the ethical guidelines process, such as providing proper citation practices. This is to just ensure that plagiarism is not impacted in your research. Usually, we have 10% applicable, like allowed plagiarized content to be added, but beyond that, we the writing or the research community do not allow more than 10% of the plagiarized content to be published. So it's very important to get your write up once, go through a proper plagiarism checker and get the proper report to avoid any kind of future trouble once it gets published. If you can move ahead, please. Yes, you can also explore the previous cohort's publication at IMPRI, where as part of Law and Public Policy Fellowship, there has been 3 cohorts where where the fellows have engaged in rigorous research process, doing on-ground research, fieldwork, incorporating that with proper methodologies and statistical tools. And you can explore them to understand how the proper research article writing layout is to be added. What are the different steps, as we have discussed today as well, is to be adhered while you're writing your research article. So for reference, you can go to books.impriindia.com to explore more idea on how to write the research article. Right, there are just a few additional tips while you're writing, as I have mentioned about the plagiarism aspect as well. There's also the proofread your report for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Because while you're reading, while you're writing, usually it's in a flow that you're writing your research. So there are many places where you miss out on the grammatical, spelling, or sentence formation, or even punctuation errors. So it's very advisable to kind of go through the whole, once you've written, to go through the review of your own manuscript by yourself after giving it some time, because again, nobody would like to read a very non-formulated sentences, or which doesn't make sense to the readers while they're reading it. So it's very advisable to go through that. And yes, we have provided you an example such as we have Turnitin as well, one of the plagiarism checker. Then Grammarly also offers one of the Turnitin. Then there is Urkund as well, where you can check your plagiarism. Sometimes institutions that you're affiliated to, they also provide you access to such softwares. So also, yes, please pay attention to formatting, ensuring consistent headings. When we say consistent headings, as in if you're going for uppercase, kindly make sure all your headings are in uppercase. And if your subheadings are in small caps, ensure they are in small caps, bold. Just make sure that it is very uniform throughout your write-up. Even the font style, if you're going for Times New Roman 12 size, kindly ensure it is consistent throughout. If the heading requires font style, uh, for example, Times New Roman 16, kindly ensure the headings are in that uniformly throughout the paper. And also the margins are also well uniform in the paper. Yes, include as many graphs and tables to support your research, because sometimes since we are talking about urban policy and local governance, there'll be a lot of statistics which is provided for urbanization, and it'll be very helpful for other readers to understand the difference, if you're speaking about urbanization, what it was in way back in 2000 and what is the current scenario with a proper table or a chart for better understanding. And yes, seek feedback from colleagues or mentors to ensure the highest editorial standards are met. As part of fellowship, we are providing you support from Manjula ma'am and her team and at IMPRI as well to go through that feedback process where you submit your manuscript and due feedback is given by the reviewers and experts for you to enhance or to increase the quality of your research write-up. So yes, we hope that with this session, it'll be very helpful for you to understand the aspects and the components of research article writing. Apart from this, we have already provided you in the guidelines document as well the detail, but at the same time, we'll be there to help you out via email or WhatsApp regarding the various process of research writing and the research different at the different stages of research that you are at. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishali ji. And now I would like to open the floor to Q&A. Participants can either use raise hand feature on Zoom or type their questions in the Q&A box or chat box if there are any questions regarding the session. If there are any questions, you can go ahead and ask your questions. Yes, Ashish Kelkar ji, you can go ahead.
I would like to know in the abstract that you have formulated also some kind of a structure to the abstract, right? So in that abstract structure, you have this presentation aspect, which is to be submitted on 11th and 12th of December. That is also added. So when we are publishing the entire research with a different journal, like SAGE, for example, what will be changed in that? Because experiments these presentations are not a part of the research articles.
So yes, definitely, since Sage publication has different guidelines, so you'll be required to alter a little bit with respect to your abstract, since you have provided your research problem in that, you have provided the methodology that you're adopting, the research question that you're raising. The only difference with respect to publishing in Sage is at this fellowship level, you'll be like once you reach the end, which is December, you'll get your findings, you'll get your recommendation. You can obviously put that highlight in that, since I spoke that in the session as well, you can put that highlight and you can remove the slide part in what form you're going to present it. You can remove that part because that's exclusively for the fellowship purpose. But you're just supposed to alter this aspect in the abstract that you can obviously give the highlight of your recommendation and the key findings of your research. because you'll be done with your fellowship and your research findings. So that'll be helpful for you, because they want a end result. The SAGE publication would like the end result of it and to understand what was it and what is the outcome of the research that you've come across, right? So that is the part where you can alter it. I hope that addresses your question.
Yes, yes, definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The question from Deepak Shah.
Yes.
He's asking the books you share at the end of the presentation, which have been published earlier, do we have access to those books for reference?
Yes, it's available at IMPRI's website. We're going to share the link here in the chat box for your reference. It's free and you can download the PDF free of cost. It'll be there and it'll be provided to you at the email once you register the details. You can easily access it there. We'll just provide you with the link.
I think there are no more questions, so we can move on in that case. Now, thank you so much once again, Vaishali ji. Now, I would like to hand over to Priyanka Negi to carry forward the abstract submission and discussion session.
Thank you, Samprikta. Good evening, everybody. I'll firstly start with sharing the list of abstracts that we have received so far. If you have submitted your abstract and you're not able to see it here, I'll also read it out aloud. Then please do let us know, unmute yourself and just let us know that your name and your abstract is not here, because it might be a possibility that we missed it in that case. So yes, Jui Katrikar ji, and the title for their abstract is Planning Policy Frameworks for Participatory Planning, a comparison of India and UK. Next, we have Ashish Kelkar ji, and the title is Quest of Neoliberal Housing Policies in India. Meenu Mohan, The Feminization of Responsibility in Kudamshri, Gender Dynamics of Empowerment, Household Negotiation, and Microcredit Dependency. Janani Ranganathan ji, Role of Public Participation and Governance in Designing Spaces under Flyovers, a study of commoning and public spaces. Khushbu Singh ji, Struggles of Resettlement and Rehabilitation, a Displaced Family's Life Story. Adarsh Tiwari ji, we have received your abstract, but there was no title attached to it. So if you can give us a revised abstract with the title as well, that would be great. Next, we have Udbhav Malhotra ji, Artificial Intelligence AI for Urban Planning and Decision Making. Then we have Sonam ji, Sustainability of Water and Sanitation in Informal Settlements of Mumbai. Next, we have Parvati ji, Scaling Up of MSWM Initiative, Interact Bio of Kochi Municipal Corporation. What are the challenges and benefits? These are what we have received so far. And these are the ones that we have not received. Snigdha Upadhyay ji, Bhagyashree Bardhan ji, Professor Deepak Shah, Vipin Paliwal ji, and Lalit Kumawat ji. If you can submit these abstracts by next week, that would be great. Since also whoever has not been following the urban policy group that we have made, Manjula ma'am has gone through the abstracts and she has mentioned that by 25th, she'll be addressing the comments on the abstracts, and also she would like to have another additional Zoom meeting and also one-on-one meeting with the participants to give more structure to the abstracts that you have submitted. So by next week would be a good time for everybody to submit their abstracts, the ones who are left. Was there anybody who has already submitted and we have missed them out? No? Okay. Well, in that case, anybody would like to discuss any issues they're having with the abstracts currently?
I would also like to know whether everyone is there in the WhatsApp group or is someone missing from the WhatsApp group. Let us know, please, because updates are being shared over there and we just want to understand whether anybody has been left out. Okay, I think everyone is there then.
Um, Malini ma'am will be joining us at around 7. So in the meanwhile, we can go through the publications, the published outcomes of the Law and Public Policy Fellowship. So you can get an idea of what the published outcome of your chapters will also look like.
Yes, as part of the Law and Public Policy Action Research Fieldwork Program, there was a compilation of all the research findings of the fellows that were published in the ISBN book, which was named as Anthology of Findings and Recommendation. If you can move to the next one. This is how the book looked like, and similarly, the Urban Fellowship book is also going to be released in the similar manner, where your findings will be published as a compilation. You can move to the contents. We had a very number of different areas where the fellows had explored the research findings and the research as well. It was from different field and different field and area. Since it was a law and public policy, it was a generic. It was not specific to any one issue, but it was more on law and public policy issue. So there were different topics such as monsoon seasons and disadvantaged communities in Yamuna floodplains in Delhi. A qualitative study on the impacts and way forward for Yamuna Pasta region, more on environmental impact aspect, And the next was a study on the level of awareness and opinions of the National Education Policy of India 2020, more on the education policy, understanding the law and public policy aspect in that. And then again, the free bus ride scheme, which was more on the governmental issue that was there. And then we had the cybersecurity laws, AI related, and the COVID-19 impact with respect to climate change issues again. Then we had the social inclusion of special needs children in India, a qualitative study. So this, since this was more on the qualitative study aspect and methodology, the fellows had explored more on the methodology which was suitable to the qualitative study. If we can move on to the next page, please. All right, this was the other topics that were explored by the fellows. If we can move ahead, we'll quickly go through the contents as well. So yeah, you can see here the abstract, how the abstract is mentioned here. It doesn't, it will be helpful to understand that the author here had mentioned that this is a qualitative study which explores the impacts of the monsoon season on communities living in the Yamuna floodplains in Delhi, with a specific focus on the disadvantages faced by these communities. The study aims to identify the challenges and vulnerabilities they encounter during displacement. Additionally, the research examines potential solutions and a way forward for the Yamuna Costa region. By gathering first-hand information from the affected communities, the study provides valuable insights into the impacts of the monsoon season and offers recommendations for addressing the issues faced by these communities. So if you look at the abstract, it's a very brief abstract which provides the gap areas, the methodology that and the aim that the author seeks to address, and what was the highlight of the research findings that was there in that. And there was a motivation attached as well, which was an extra component of it, which you can obviously call the motivation or the aim, which was there. And there was the problem area, which was the Yamuna Pusta region, which has been explained properly by the researcher, which addresses the research area, the problem area as well. If we can move on to the next page. Right. Yes, when you're addressing your research problem area, so it's very advisable to provide and support with a map of the region specifically that you are writing or you're addressing your problem areas with, and also to provide a certain background of the problem area that you're addressing. Right. If you look at the image right below that, it's written figure 1. So this is how you're supposed to write the various figures that you're going to write in your research article. So here it is written figure 1. It's provided the details of what the figure is about. And there's a page number which is on page number 2. So this is how you're supposed to refer your figures and tables in the manuscript. We can move on to the next. Right, there was a figure 2 as well, where you can see it's a bar chart. And the next component that they have explored the various objectives of the research area that they have explored. And next component is the hypothesis, which is provided by the researcher in this. We can move on to the next. Yes, this is the research methodology that the author has adopted, which it's a qualitative research approach and employing a case study base that the researcher has done. And the findings have also been mentioned by the researcher in this. Right. So since a case study based as referred to by the researcher, that it's a case study based. So this is how the case study has been provided by the author in such a manner during that period. Yes, if we can move on to the next one. Yes, and they're supported by pictures as well in the case study. If we can move on to the next. Right. At the end, there's another component, which is the result and discussion with what has been the outcome of the research, where the researcher has explored that interaction with the participants in this particular case study. Okay, move ahead, please. Then the analysis part and the way forward. Another component that they have included is the analysis and the way forward, where they provided recommendations, the conclusions of the research. If we can move ahead. And then the conclusion part as well. And if you can look at the references, here is the detailed references where the researchers has provided, where it includes where are the sources that has been taken from. Yes, so we can move ahead. Yes, so and so forth. There's another one that can be explored by the participants to understand how, based on your study, they can explore it. Yes, we have the literature review as well in this one, which will be helpful for you to understand how you're supposed to provide your literature review. If you can go back with the box story once, Priyanka. Right. So you must have seen in the guidelines document that we have asked you to use different creative ways as well. So this is one of them where you provide a box story with a photo and a description of what it was about your research that you have taken across from in a creative manner. If we can come to the last part as well, where we can show them the contributions. Mentioned with the designation. So fellows, you are requested once you submit your manuscripts, you'll be requested to submit a photo, passport size, a brief bio about your self, your education qualification, where you're located, so that you can put it across here in the contribution sections. Right, this is the section where supervisors are mentioned here. Right, this is the list of editors and the IMPRI's publication details. So this is how the whole layout of your chapter in the ISBN book is also going to be published in a similar manner. And to further understand, you can download the anthology of essays and recommendation books of various fellowships that has been conducted by IMPRI from the books.impriindia.com, as I have provided in the chat box as well for further reference. Thank you.
Hello, I had a question. Uh, hello.
Yes, yes,
Vaishali.
Joji.
Yeah. So just it can so if there is a time constraint, the research can be a purely secondary research, right? Y-
Mm,
Yes, yes.
yes. Mm.
okay. Yeah.
For this fellowship, we are intending to go for a secondary only. That was
Yeah.
action research. That is our different program. If
Yeah.
you intend to do that, or if you can do one, two case study, taking interview of anyone, or if you let us know, we can connect to you someone, you can make it a box story or something like that. But
Yeah.
that won't be required.
Yeah, because I think I will not be able to do a primary research for
And
this. Yeah.
that's not right. For that, we take 4 to 6 months. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
long
Okay. Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But what is the topic you have chosen, Julie?
It's part. So I had told you about neighborhood planning, and a comparison of local that neighborhood planning in the UK and in India. So I will be comparing it through policies as well as through case studies. So case studies of UK and case studies of India. So I will do that, but yeah, that will be all secondary, but like through reading and all of that.
Right. So it will more of a literature review and analysis. That's
Yeah, literature review and analysis, probably. Yes.
yeah, right. No, that will be fine. You can go to our books website and look at some
Yeah.
other books outcome. You will get a sense of it.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Priyanka, we can show once again the guidelines document for publication
Yes, sir.
because
Yes.
this was just for the book chapter which we will publish. There are also other avenues how you should plan your work. Vaishali will once again tell you everything about it. Dr. Vaishali, just the publishing part, we go through once again. Yeah.
Mhm. We can move to the publishing company, please. Right. So here in the guidelines document, we have provided you with details on the publication, which is going to be the post submission, and the submission and publication if happening at IMPRI, at the outside of IMPRI. So we have provided you with a list of guidelines on where you can get it published. For example, the research essay, which is you're going to provide it the PDF format. Uh, it can be submitted in various platforms, right? Such as by creating, first of all, a very professional research profile at ResearchGate and academia profile, and also uploading your research report there itself. It can be obviously for public use and where you can connect with your various peers, scholars, and researchers as well. Next, you can obviously write a blog article for IMPRI Insights as well, in a word limit of 800 to 1,000 words, where you can provide a key summary, findings, or a story-based submission of your report, findings and experience of your research uh, that can be published at IMPRI blogs. Then we have another component that come across is, if we can move to the next page, please. As it's mentioned, to contribute a chapter to an editing book with ISBN in 3,000 to 4,000 words. The book that we shared, which was the Law and Public Policy Fieldwork Anthology of Essays book. In that, it was in the form of chapters, the various of the fellows who took part in the fellowship, and their report was published in the form of chapter in that book. So similarly, fellows can publish their chapters as well and the research findings in that form. Then we have publications outside IMPRI, where publishing in various journals, apart from the ResearchGate, which is mentioned, but there is obviously other platforms such as EPWC journals, as was mentioned by one of our fellow. Then at IMPRI itself, we have the Impact and Policy Research Review Journal as well, where you can make your submission. It's a peer-reviewed journal where you can sum up your based on the guidelines that is mentioned in the website regarding the journal. You can make that submission. Apart from that, there are various different journals based on UGC Care, Scopus, or IGME and social change related journals, which are there, where based on the guidelines which are provided, you can make your submissions. Also, the various journal which is there, and if you can move ahead. Right. There are areas such as magazine articles, op-ed and commentary articles in newspaper or electronic newspaper form. You can make your submission in small findings, and also for paper presentation in various conferences as well. You can provide your research findings there, and you can get more advice from the experts or recommendations from them as well to further extend your research and explore on that. So this is another section that we have provided you with to further elevate your research findings and get it published and create more discourse on this to have further more research and get in-depth expert reviews as well. Right, there is obviously creative for social media as well. At IMPRI, we have provided this provision for the fellows to submit if they are doing a on-ground study, they can like a field work, they can obviously provide with the photos, a video, or a short reel that can be submitted in the social media platform as well to further create an outreach of your research findings. So these are various different areas of research publication that we have mentioned in the guidelines document. Ashish-ji. You're on mute. Sorry, could you please unmute?
Yes. So what I want to ask is, now I'm going to do the field research. It's going to be a big research, what to say. It is just going to be like a box story that you have shown in the from the previous journals, previous books. So when I'm doing this research, field research, does IMPRI will give some kind of a contacts to the persons who will be engaged in the housing sector of low income category?
So based on your stakeholders, once you have gone through, like it's approved by Manjula ma'am, the abstract, right? So we'll further start with your stakeholder mapping and the research methodology that you're going to adopt, right? In that, once you have mapped out completely your stakeholders, with whom you're going to interact or with whom you're going to get your questionnaire filled, since it's going to be box story, it'll be interview based as well. Once we get that, and if you require assistance in getting reaching out to them, we will obviously help you out in getting the right contacts to you, so that you can start with your research there. So we'll be obviously helping you and supporting you in that aspect.
Thank you.
Vaishali, we can also share with Ashish ji action research का ना
Yes,
जो letter वाला form है ना वो
yes.
उसमें
We'll share the letter of support as well.
वो form बस कुछ share कर से ना वो field work का idea लग जाएगा.
Yes.
Just
we'll
share that form with Ashish ji on WhatsApp. We have another program on action research. Form Ashish ji, when you will see, no, go through, उसमें सब कुछ mention है, आपको पूरा idea लग जाएगा. वो हम आपको share करेंगे.
Like a letter of support that we provide to the fellows. So whenever you reach out to government officials or residents or citizens as well. So especially to officials, they try to understand that why you're doing the research, why you're extracting this information. So it's very important to show them that you're affiliated with this particular fellowship, with this institute, and for this particular research, you're doing it, and the findings will be, so and so forth will be published. So for that, I'll share one sample with you, as sir mentioned. That'll give you an idea how that will be work with respect to field work, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has any query or concern regarding their abstracts or fieldwork, please let us know with respect to getting or any kind of help or support from IMPRIs.
Also, since some of you were requesting for specific papers from Manjula ma'am, she's unable to provide them at the moment, like at least before 22nd or 25th. In the meanwhile, she's asked to kindly go through these readings. These are very thorough readings that she's provided. So in the meanwhile, to get an idea about your respective topics, you can go through these also. This is a very extensive list. You will find a lot of good papers in this one. Yeah, so this is one of the things that you'll find in your guidelines document. You can see I've scrolled down towards the end. So that is where all of these readings are present. And in case you struggle with access to some documents or something like that, you can always write back to us on learning@impri@gmail.com. And also, if you are currently working on your abstracts and you're stuck somewhere and some queries you have, of course, ma'am will revise and have one-to-one discussions with you. It would also be a good point to note them down. And if you want, you can send them to us also over email. That will also work. So yeah. Kindly go through the guidelines document once thoroughly. I think that will help a lot in understanding the whole writing aspect of it. And books, for the books, I think the link has been shared on the chat box with everybody, so you can explore it there. Yes. Okay. Samprikta, I think we're good to go with the next session.
Sure, thank you so much. As we have Professor Malini Krishnankutty ji here with us, so we can move on. I'm delighted to invite Professor Malini Krishnankutty ji, Adjunct Associate Professor, Center for Urban Science and Engineering, CUSC, IIT Bombay, for the next session of the day. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Over to you.
Hi. I was just wondering if I had to share my share of PPT. Can I just go ahead and do that?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
but
Okay.
we are not able to see your video.
Yeah, it's just coming on. There's some
Okay.
delay. Yeah, just
Okay.
give me a second, huh? Okay. There seems to be some issue, right? It's not come on. Okay, great. It's here. Okay. So can I just share my screen and start off right away? Is that
Yes.
okay? Yeah, all of you can see my slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And today can you also see that little strip on top, which is going over my slide here?
No, the sharing band, no.
You're not seeing it, no? Because I'm seeing it.
You can go towards the right of it. There is a hide ribbon option.
Yeah,
The
it's
3 dots hide ribbon, then you will also be not able to see it.
okay. Sorry about this. Just give me a second. Yeah. It says hide video panel and floating meeting controls. Is that the one?
No, not that one. Go further. Can you see 3 dots?
I've gone to the 3 dots and it just says it's not
It
giving
is
me.
showing hide ribbon? No.
It's not giving me hide ribbon, but anyway, that's okay. It's fine. As long as you guys are seeing the whole screen and that's fine for me. Good evening, and today as I'm talking about participatory urban planning and local governance. If you're wondering, like for some people, urban planning may not be directly something about urban policy, or they wonder about that connection. So I think first I will start initially by talking about the first part of my talk. I'm going to be giving the context, laying the context of urban planning in India. And then I'm going to move on to give instances to illustrate how participation has been, to what extent we've had participation in urban planning. And then kind of focus, after I give a kind of sketch that landscape, I will talk about Chittoor Tatamangalam master plan. This exercise, which has been a completely bottom-up participatory planning process that I've been part of, and this master plan has just recently been published. It would be kind of useful to look at it and see what opportunities it holds, and whether, how scalable is it, and, what does it mean for thinking about cities as we go ahead. Yeah. Talking about the current context and why are we talking about urban planning, essentially when we think about cities, just like we have the framework of laws and regulations, urban planning is a governmental tool that determines, that lays the framework for how you can, how people can build in the city, how the city, it shapes the city's urban environment. So the master plan actually, master plan actually sets the context for all the regulations governing space in the city. And so it's an important tool to kind of understand as we think about urban policy and governance. It's an important regulatory mechanism that is there and that actually controls our cities. Now, having said that, we've seen the state of our cities, and it often looks as if there is no real planning, or at least it looks as if only some parts of it are planned. And so what is this planning that we are talking about? If we look at the 12th schedule, it lists 18 subjects. It gives those to municipalities. And I know that from the last 2 lectures that you've had, you've talked about both what has happened with the 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, how powers have been devolved to the municipalities. And along with that, you squarely, urban planning and town planning have been given over as responsibilities to cities. So it's their responsibility to plan. And if we look, so that's established. Who plans? It's the municipalities, it's the urban local bodies that have to do this. And if you look at India's administrative setup, as per the if you look at the 2011 census, you'll know that there are 4,041 towns, and there are about 6.5 lakh villages, which are governed by 2.7 panchayats, right? So there's also this confusing entity of census towns, but administratively, if we think about it, it is 4,041 towns and 6.49 or about 6.5 lakh villages. So administratively, it is 4,041 towns, I'm repeating, and 2.7 panchayats that are responsible for all the villages in India. Now, I have said very clearly that urban planning is something that is the municipalities or the town's responsibility. So what does that mean? That these 4,041 towns should have master plans, should have plans which will guide their future development. Okay, now that we know this, do all cities in India have plans? You know, what is the reality? So what we find very interestingly is that though a third of India lives in urban areas, only about 1,800 of them have statutory plans. Okay, so all cities are supposed to have plans. There are, another, like, of the remaining 55% or so, about half more, there are the plans are in the process of making. But essentially, as of today, like, it says that 1,800 have plans. Some of them, like the big cities, which started very early in the 60s, they have had their second and third iteration of the development plan. So the plans, these master plans, these development plans have actually not only been prepared for these big cities, but they have a horizon of usually 20 years. And after those 20 years, you've seen that they have got revised. So Mumbai has had its third revision in 2016. Delhi has just recently is going through its third revision, and so on. So the big cities have actually had plans for quite a while, but the other smaller cities, what you find is a large number of them, over 2,000 of them, have never had a plan. Okay. Now, of course, the census towns don't have plans. What are these census towns? These are villages which have urban characteristics, which are transitioning, which are looking more and more urban. They're often in the periphery of these big cities, but they are administered as villages, and they, of course, don't have plans. Right now, another interesting fact: implementation rate of development plans is very low, only 8 to 10%. What does that mean? So the issue is that you have plans. What do these plans contain? They actually set out, like if you see in that the plan, a fragment of a plan on the screen. This is from Mumbai's old DP. It shows you colors, there are some things are in red, some areas are marked in green. These are reserved areas. So these are areas where the planner has said, this area needs a park. This area needs a school. So there are parcels of land actually set aside for the future, and also existing amenities are marked, but there are also lands reserved for the future in the master plan. Without that reservation, or as you can imagine, development will proceed and all those areas will get built up. Now, there are also cases where these reservations are put on somebody's private land. So that person knows that the city is interested in developing that plot of land, and there will be some compensation mechanisms, etc., for the city to acquire it, or for the private developer. Today, we have incentives to get him to develop for the city, and he gets some incentive in return, some development rights in return, right? So but now the implementation rate is 8 to 10%. What does that mean? After these reservations are put on the plan, we are finding that only 8 to 10% of these amenities that are marked on the plan actually get implemented. Okay, so that's quite dismal. So you're beginning to see why plans. First of all, why are cities the way they are? Because half of them don't have any plans. Even where the plans are there, the implementation rate is quite poor, often due to lack of funds. And I think in your second lecture, you also got a sense of how municipalities themselves are quite weak in the larger structure of Indian democracy and the way powers are devolved. You have most of the funding, the center is all powerful, followed by the state, the central government, followed by the state government. And by the time it comes to municipalities, they neither have power nor too much funding. So and that is where the plans are nestled. So that's another reason why we have this kind of situation with plans not coming to fruition. Further, you find that there are not too many planners, not too many government planners actually in charge of towns. So if you take the case of a city like Mumbai, if this was an interactive class, I would say, I would ask you, how many planners do you think are there in a city like Mumbai, which has 12.5 million people? 12.44 or something. So the answer surprisingly is none. We had a couple of planners till a few years ago. Both of them have retired. And prior to the 90s, we again had no planners. So then what does that mean? Even if for big cities you're not having planning, how is this all being managed? And I think I'll start by just giving you a little more detail about how this whole institution and how this practice of urban planning is actually taking place, and how what can we expect as we think about urban planning and managing the development and growth of our cities. So urban planning in India, what are the kinds of plans there are? Okay, so there are typically what I just told you, which is that there should be master plans or development plans for cities. Of course, only 24% of all cities are now covered, etc. But apart from that, there are regional plans. Okay, so there are regional plans, typically are for metropolitan areas. They are larger scale plans that actually want to control the growth of outgrowths of cities, so of the big metros. So the metropolitan areas typically have what are called regional plans. And there are a few regional plans in India, but and this has grown in the last decade. But essentially, so you have the macro level plans, the regional plans, you have the meso level, which is the master plans. The majority of spatial plans or urban plans are these master plans. And thirdly, you have these micro or local area plans, which are almost non-existent. The idea has been floated multiple times. It has been tried, but that has really not taken off. So but in theory, we have these three levels and detailed local area plans. In fact, in the last Mumbai development plan, we floated this idea, but it didn't actually materialize. Or similarly in Delhi, there was an idea and even a pilot was run, but it's not come through. So this is one thing you need to understand, that most of the plans that we see are master plans, and there are a few regional plans. Now, these regional plans in Maharashtra, for instance, it's the only state that had the entire area of the state now is covered by spatial plans, meaning there are as many districts, every district has had, there are enough regional plans that cover all the districts. And in fact, I think one of the chief planners famously said that every inch of Maharashtra is planned. Okay, so now who makes these plans? Like what we just mentioned, if there are no planners, and who's making these plans? If they're not embedded in the urban local body, how are these plans being made? So typically, it's the development authority, which has trained planners that prepares plans. They assist the urban local bodies in their state. Okay, so or in their metropolitan region. So the development authority is one authority that makes plans. The other is actually the town and country planning department of every state. So what you're finding is, what you see is that it's actually the state government, both the development authority as well as the town and country planning department are state bodies with planners employed there who are preparing these plans for municipalities, okay, for cities, for municipal councils. And the urban local bodies development plan department, or sometimes a special planning authority, or in some cases, even an old colonial time improvement trust may also, be in charge of making the plan or implementing the plan, but they're always assisted by the state department. Okay, so that's who makes it. Now, who implements is, it's either the development authority in a regional in a regional plan along with the collector, or it is the urban local body. So the development plan department of the urban local body will be actually implementing the plan. They will give permissions for when people come for development. They will regulate. They will check if the people are building in accordance with the plan. Yeah, I hope this is clear. It's very hard in a Zoom to really understand. If there's any issue, please unmute and let me know. Okay, so now there is another issue. I mean, before we jump into the participatory part, I want to also tell you that, like I mentioned briefly, that the reason we have no implementation is, or very poor implementation is, no funding is tied to these plans, right? So historically, what we've had is this. In India, we've had economic planning. When you talk about planning, it's economic planning. It's the 5-year plans. And there is funding that is devolved, which is devolved from the center to the state, to districts or taluks. And that's been the fund flow. But when you look at plans, like I said, there are regional level plans and city level plans. But there is, at these regional plans, there are no funds tied to these spatial plans. Okay, so this is a big problem, that basically you have, where there is funds, where there are funds, there are no plans. Where there are plans, there are no funds. So this is an issue with spatial planning. And now we have kind of now that I've given you that understanding of how these plans are located, we also need to understand what goes into planning, right? What is a development plan? What is a master plan? So it essentially has a 3-stage process. First, you will gather data about your area, the city. Then you go through an understanding, a situation analysis. You'll gather all that data. You'll prepare an existing land use map. Then you will analyze along sectors. You will come up with some objectives for the plan, a vision sometimes for the plan. And you'll also project in 20 years, what is the population that my city is going to grow to. So today, if we have X population, it will be Y in 20 years, and you have to plan amenities for that future population. So that's essentially what that stage 2 is about. And finally, you will come up with a proposed land use plan, which has a number of proposals on, like you saw in that colored map, many reservations, many amenities, maybe new roads. You will draw out the alignment, not exactly, but indicative about what you want to put there for the 20-year horizon. Yeah. And now all of this plan making, this process of development plan making is governed by an act. There's always a Town and Country Planning Act for each state, because land is a state subject. So planning is devolved, is actually with the state, and it's under a state level Town Planning Act. So, and I just put out the typical 8 kind of stages of plan preparation. First, there's a declaration of intention to prepare a plan, followed by the existing land use survey. That is, you go and try and understand what is this land that you're actually going to plan for. Then you prepare the plan. And after the plan is prepared by the planner, there is a publishing of the plan, inviting suggestions and objections from the public. And then there are, possible ways. After you hear the public, you modify, and then you submit finally to state government. State government may make more modifications, and finally the plan is sanctioned. So if you look at this 8-stage process, and you can see that the word public appears once, what you really understand is that master planning is an expert top-down process with no real participation. That's pretty clear from whatever we've seen so far, right? And if you look at this, current status, what you're saying is that even that public suggestions process is actually, the plan is made, and then you're putting the plan out with a limited public engagement. The plans are prepared, master plans are displayed and suggestions, objections sought within either a 60-day or 90-day period, right? So clearly there is no public involvement in this whole process of master planning. So I'm assuming clearly that there is a need for public participation, real public participation in urban planning, which currently is obviously not there, right? Okay, so that's kind of, I've given you the big overview, and we're going to move into, I mean, it's quite shocking actually, if I speak to a non-planner and someone in the city, because we all live, I mean, many of us live in cities, and you expect that when a plan is being made, you'll expect that somebody asks you, how would you, if I ask a non-planner, how would you go about planning something for somebody, then the first thing would be, well, you'll ask them what they want and so on and so forth. So there would be, an engagement is the minimum expectation, right? Which is not there, because it's assumed that the planners know their task and they go about doing it. Now, it's also a pretty limited exercise in the sense that it's essentially seen as a land use planning exercise. What is the planner doing? It's not socioeconomic planning, but it's actually land use, deciding which parcels of land will have what activity. So it's a very limited exercise, and that's defined by law. If you look at the Act, it says development. How is development defined? It's defined as as the development of land. So that's also one of the reasons why it is such a limited exercise. But regardless, now, if we think about, if we look at what is participation and in urban planning, and we find that essentially there is, we look at, there are 3 instances, 2 instances, and then CHURS, 2 instances where participation has happened at different levels. One is at the district level and the other is at the state level. If I'm going to take you through the column experiment, important one from Kerala. Excuse me, I'm just curious, how much time do I have? Hello. Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm one of the participants. Ideally, the class runs till 8 p.m.
Yeah, but today I was supposed to start at 7:15, right? And going on till 8:15. So we are okay, right? If I go a little
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
ma'am.
Yeah, great. Okay, so if we, so what I wanted to say was that if I look at the column experiment, it is, it's actually a very unusual and exercise that was undertaken in response to the 1992 Constitutional Amendment Act, which devolved the powers to local bodies. And actually, there was a talk, the district planning committee was formed, which actually went ahead and decided to create a wonderful institutional institutional structure through which economic planning that we just talked about, the fund devolution as well as the plans are integrated. So it's the only case of its kind. It's the only example of its kind where you have the two coming together in a meaningful way. And this is an exceptional plan, the Integrated District Development Plan of Kollam, brought about in 2003. And a combination of top and bottom approaches was put here. 69 panchayats, 2 municipal councils and 1 municipal corporation were involved. There were plans made not only for the entire district, but also for these local bodies. Okay. Now, there was this, the DPC chair was aided by, he expressed this idea that, now we have this opportunity to create a plan, and what do you think? And Mr. Jacob Izo, who was the retired additional chief planner, rose to this challenge and created this entire structure through which you create a spatial platform on which all the economic funding opportunities and the proposals come together. So what you had the District Planning Committee of Kollam actually decides to create this IDDP for the district, and the state government accorded special sanction as a pilot project, and the State Department of Town and Country Planning becomes a nodal agency for this. So what you find, I mean, this looks really, really complex, but essentially what you have is it's the first time that at the district level, you have a draft development plan that is made. Like I said, it's always, there is a local data gathering, there is analysis. So what you find is that two things happen in parallel. In each of these 72 local bodies, there are local LDPs being created, local development plans being created. And then at the district level, you are having a district level analysis and data being set up, development issues, goals, objectives, and a development concept is made, which feeds into, and while they're doing the district level data analysis, the local level data is fed into that district level data. So there is a little bit of back and forth. And after the IDDP at the district level, once the goals are set up, that goes and informs the preparation of the local development plan. And then those specific proposals at the local level actually come back and inform the final district development plan. So little bit of iteration up and down, but all beautifully, I can share papers on this, which there are very, very cleverly crafted different kinds of planning committees, where, often in some the chair is the district collector, in some it's the DPC chair, the conveners are often or mostly the district town planners. So variety of working groups, spatial, there's also both at the local levels as well as the district level. And then you'll have these spatial integration committees. And there's a whole process that was worked out and toolkits made so people understand, a lot of, hand-holding, telling people they had never been exposed to this. So what you find is at the district level, like I said, there is data collection, sectoral analysis, and spatial analysis. And then after the development issues are drawn up with inputs from the local level, there's a concept, policies, and strategies. And so in all of this, and the same thing happens at the local level. Now, what is interesting is, where is the top and bottom? When we say top and, there is both a top and bottom process here, bottom up, top down, and bottom up. In the data collection, you'll have a special, there are discussions with stakeholders. In the secondary, at the local level, panchayat level, there's a lot of working groups created, and people, people are involved. What you find here is it's not general janta. It is, so the difference is there is inputs from the bottom, but it is informed stakeholders. There are NGOs, there are groups that are working on certain issues. So in people who are connected are brought on board, institutions are brought on board. So it's a very informed process. People who know and who are working in the grassroots are part of the process. So that is how this Kollam IDDP was done in 2003. At that time, Mr. Izo also went on and made the district urbanization plan. He went on and made the state urbanization plan when he was the additional chief planner. And of course, it went on and informed a few other districts in Kerala. But since then, there has been a change, and they have pretty much gone back to, they have changed their act also to reflect this process, to be in line with the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. But somewhere this comprehensive view has been lost in the last decade. Okay, and especially I think since 2020, the act itself has been amended, so there has been a shift. Okay, but clearly in this whole participation process, this process that we saw of master plan making, at the district level, there was one component which becomes central because people have never been involved in any such process. There is an awareness building component. Then there's a capacity building component. People need to know if they have to be involved, if they're surveying, if they're doing things, getting data. There is a certain amount of capacity building. And finally, there is stakeholder participation. And we'll see as we go on how this plays out in other contexts. The second one, now the second and the third examples are squarely urban plan, like spatial planning only initiatives, and how planning has been part of that. So IDDP column is a special case where the state machinery comes together, and it is, this the funding that comes from the State Finance Commission or all that funding which is devolved, and which you heard in the first with Mr. Thomas Isaac's presentation, that 40% of funding that was devolved, where should it be spatially allocated is captured in this IDDP. So that's why this IDDP is very special. Okay, now if you look at the second case, it was Goa at the regional scale. Now Goa, the regional plan covers the entire state. What is different here for in the 2021 regional plan? There was a CM's task force which did this plan. Area is much larger, 3,700 square kilometers. So a broad, plan is made, but it does not detail out. It doesn't go ahead and fix that for each of the 189, for each of the 189 villages or the municipalities or the municipal corporation, it doesn't go down and detail out what has to happen where. So it's doing this broad kind of, the big moves are decided. If there are growth centers, it roughly indicates that in this taluka, maybe in this village, we are thinking about this. If the MOPA, the second airport, it's roughly in MOPA, but it doesn't specify where. And that decision is actually is left to the villages to come back. The village panchayats were given a kit explaining the broad layout, explaining even how much FSI, how much development potential. There are settlement categories that were decided at the regional level. And then when this regional plan details, this what they call the kit is sent with all the details of the regional plan, the Sarpanch, along with the technical team, actually explains to the people what is actually the technical team explains to the village panchayat, and the panchayat has a committee that then explains to its people and gathers data. So there is also a data at the settlement level about, lot of little like, where should the roads be? What are the details? What should change? Is there new roads? Are there roads which need improvement? All of that is captured in some questionnaires. This is done in 3 languages. And then all of that information of things that they want, amenities that they want, they also including the very contentious, where should your garbage landfill be, is all determined. And then it is sent back to the regional, to the state level committee and incorporated into the regional plan. So these final details of infrastructure, big infrastructure, is actually coming after consultation with the people. So that's a very unusual process. And now I'm going to get into the last bit, which is, now when you've seen all of this, you see that there's no real and direct participation of people, right? And is such a true participative planning process even possible? Planning seems to be such an expert-driven kind of a process. So what is the, what is the role of experts? Is this participation something we are just dreaming up? Right. So I'm going to transport you to this really tiny village. I'm sorry, it's already so late, but I'm going to take another 10-12 minutes to explain this. So this is Chittur Tatamangalam in Kerala. It's a tiny little municipality, and I was fortunate to be involved here as a master plan expert committee member, along with one other person, Jairaj Sundareshan. And we were tasked by the municipality to do a master plan to do an alternative master plan to what the Department of Town Planning had done for them. Okay, so I'm just giving you some pictures to get a sense of this, how idyllic this is, a rural, semi-rural kind of setting, paddy fields, right? This is the context. Just 14 square kilometers. I would almost call it a village, but it's been a municipal council for 100 years. And a rural agrarian setting, very, very in rich cultural tradition, and has 171 ponds in its 14 square kilometers. It's an old rainwater harvesting system of Aries. Okay. Now, it took a decade for the Department of Town Planning to actually, from the time the resolution to prepare the plan was passed to when the draft plan actually got passed, and which is this is in October 21 that that the plan was published, and then the municipality, this was the first plan that the town had. And that was the time when we got involved. We worked on this pro bono for a year. And this is a template. What they got was a template master plan. Basically the proposals were road widening, 4 bypass roads. You've seen the town, really idyllic. 4 bypass town, not much of, not much of movement and growth. In fact, negative growth. But all the roads were supposed to be widened, 6 to 9 meters. Roads were proposed to be 12 to 21 meters wide, 2 lorry terminals, 1 terminal market. It just looked like boom. Everyone, the town planners had thought that this place is going to explode, and there will be a lot of growth, is what they envisaged. So what did we do? We created firstly, we had to tell people that what this plan was about. So there was a whole public outreach, a 3-stage participatory process we had, all in Malayalam, to get the plans, to get inputs on the plan, because now this is that suggestion objection period. People had to write in and tell the government what it didn't like, right? It didn't like the road widening, it didn't like the lorry terminals, or it didn't like some other things about the plan. So we did this public outreach at the ward level, and I've written here how many people attended, and how many. And what was interesting is in a 8,000 odd household town, we got 1,123 suggestions, objections, and essentially this was the first phase. You can see how these meetings were held, explanations were done, etc. The second, which is never done typically in a typical master plan exercise, is we went to people and we conducted these 20 focus group discussions on sectoral and thematic issues. 550 people came to these meetings. And why did we do this? To understand what the issues were, what they liked about the town, what they wanted to change, how they wanted to change. So we recorded them. I'm sorry. So we started with actually children. So it's all different age groups, also by themes. So these were the 32 different themes on which we held meetings. Child, women, caste, disability, climate. So some were themes, like I said, public health, sports, traditional business, festivals. So a whole range of things, water bodies, sanitation, the typical sectors, but also crime, safety, traditional arts, crafts, livelihoods. So lots and lots. I mean, we covered the gamut of things. And so that was the second stage. Alongside, we were lucky to get some support to have 1.5, 2 planners working, 1 part-time, 1 full-time, junior planners helping us on site. And basically, we did a lot of data updation. Because we had to, the data we had was a decade old. We needed to have a real existing land use map. And we did a lot of other data updation. Now, just to give you a sense, how did we do it? We used local people. We used the local students from a geography department led by their professor, Dr. Richard Scaria. And you can see them going around. What we did is the mapping was done in local languages. So in the local language. Now, why did we do that? Typically, you've seen maps which talk about, these were the big categories, right? Agricultural, residential, commercial, industrial, all these typical categories. But when we went on the ground, even something like agriculture, you think, oh, it's agricultural land. But actually, there are words in the local language which tell you what it is, meaning it told us the story of transformation. There are words for paddy field, padam. or words for mixed with coconut, pardon with the paddy with coconut, and there are words which when it is left fallow. So Tarishibhumi or right. So what we found is, what was very, very interesting is that we could map by telling people to map what they were seeing in the local language, we actually could capture transformation. Okay, so we understood which parts of the city, of the town were transforming, which parts of the, and that was very interesting. I'm just going to give you a few examples of what all we mapped. We mapped a lot, but again, using local knowledge and using, so something like residential, you think it's residential, it's just houses, but actually it's broken up into older traditional clusters of settlements by community, by occupation. So there are, I'll show you some photographs, and I mean, none of this is captured in just residential. So when you don't capture something that's there on the ground, you're not going to be able to address it in a plan, right? So these are just older houses that are falling apart. There are row houses of the Brahmin community, 5 such clusters. There were weavers, a huge weaving tradition that dates hundreds of years. So pit looms, very, very interesting types. We also mapped public spaces, social spaces, cultural spaces, things that typically were not being mapped. Okay, festival routes and a lot of commons, things which would look just look at the majestic. I mean, these are the public spaces that people were meeting at, the weekly markets, things which were ephemeral were not mapped, of course. But even what you found is there were grounds which were being actively used. There were festival routes which were not marked, but very major celebrations through half the year. Lot of ponds which were left like unused and also very actively used. So we mapped, and even there were things like this, there's actually just what looks like just 2 posts, but this is a yarn stretching ground, right? And this in the development plan that was given to them, the draft, it was shown as a park. It was reserved for a park. Now this is a livelihood space, right? But because it was not done by somebody known, it was left out, or these burial grounds left out because it was not mapped. It was just seen as some leftover space, vacant space, etc. So we did this updated ELU, and then we did a lot of, so what we found is we could map in detail how the city is used, how the place is used, how the town is used. It's actually a twin settlement with quite differing ways of using space also. So we updated as much whatever information we got. We also, because the water was such an important part of this narrative and this landscape, we did extensive mapping. We mapped morbidity patterns because health, again, it's an older community, and there were very interesting morbidity patterns, high cancer, high health issues, etc. So drainage networks, we mapped and found that there's quite an interesting system of drainage flows and a cascading tank situation. So anyway, we did all of this, and finally, the last thing that we did after we collected all this data, we called experts who, again, everyone came pro bono and contributed to this plan, but they gave their inputs. It was a 3-day final Shilpashala master plan workshop. And we could actually, so we took them around, showed them the place, gave them all the data we had. And then there were stakeholders through our focus group discussions who actually contributed, who participated in this, from the focus group discussions, we knew who could engage in what sector. So we invited them to sit along with the experts and come up with proposals. And on the last day, we had something called a mini public, where people from the general town people, everyone from just a Kudumbashri worker to a assistant engineer, were brought together. So across income groups, across caste, there was no, we invited people, and for each of the sectoral proposals, they actually sat around what the experts had done and come up with. They debated it and added or changed or modified or gave suggestions. And then that final version actually made it to the plan. That's what we took. to create the final proposals. So a final plan was prepared. Then it took another year to convince town planning department and state government to accept this with revisions. We had to go through, and right now it's got published. So that's where we are. And and then we created this Malayalam handbook to give to the community. So every household got a little booklet explaining what the final plan is. And so this tells you that, you can't do away with the expert, because it's a very expert driven, in a sense, the process of finally bringing out these proposals, plus it's statutorily guided, there are rules, regulations, it's not very easy, but at least initially it will need some amount of a guided, like an expert guided process to enable the local community to imagine and provision for its own future. So but I feel that, new ways will have, and every time it's not something that, you just take. The process is kind of now an interesting process that I think can be scaled up. Language is a powerful starting point to record the ordinary lived practices of the community. So we found that there are certain things that we should do, we should definitely do. And, we've learned from this whole process how we can map temporal uses, marginalized stakeholders, environmental imperatives, which are usually not central to plan making, and that experts can definitely play a role to help community achieve that vision. We had an extensive, like I said, advisory committee. They're all listed here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for providing such a comprehensive and enlightening session. I would now like to open the floor for Q&A session. Participants can either use raise hand feature on Zoom or type their questions in the Q&A box or chat.
Okay, I see.
Ashish Kelkar has a question.
Yes, so one thing is very simple, Parvati, I think, says, does plan preparation vary according to different states? Yes, it does. So it can be 10, 15 or 20. Yeah, that's clear. I think Ashish had a question.
Yes, basically I have a question in sense that we have a period of planning which takes around 10 years, and also the size, the timing of the planning is also for 20 years or 30 years or 25 years. So, and the development becomes so fast that it really outpaces the planning mechanism. So how do you deal with that in planning?
Right. So the thing is that, actually today we have a whole, what happens is usually like when you say it takes 10 years to make a plan, like you saw in this case, a small area, 14 square kilometers, which could be like one ward of a city or something. It up to the final, despite all the innovation that we were doing, right, and engaging people, which always people say take a long time, etc., it still took us only 8 months. Okay, so, but what happens is now that this plan is there, now when the next plan happens, which will be 20 years later, right, it's like, now what? How can we, now again we'll start that process to prepare, to map the place, etc. So instead, today we have enough tools in our hand. This is on GIS. As a building approaches you for mapping, for development permission, you put it into the plan. So it is a constant updation. That is one. Once the database is what takes most time. If the analysis part, today the analysis with the GIS and all that doesn't need to take that much time. And further, I think like we saw with COVID, or like if we look back at a time when we didn't have mobiles, we can't really predict the future. So things are going to change quite a lot. And this whole 20-year horizon itself seems ridiculous with climate change. It has to be very dynamic. In fact, in many other countries, the review, it's almost like an annual review, 3-yearly review. Because your data is all synchronized. If there's a new, like here, I didn't mention this, but a lot of central projects come to you, right? Meaning they, like a smart city is announced at the national level. Suddenly there is it's nothing to do with your plan. So infrastructure projects, a bullet train or something else is announced, and it's going to change what you planned 20 years ago, for a 20-year horizon. So one thing is there should be synchronicity. Like when someone is announcing something, they have to take the plan on board and then see how to kind of mesh it, bring it together. But apart from that, you really need, I think it's very, very high time that we modified the way we are doing things. It can't be this way. And that's something that this process taught me, that people really know. It's just, it's like water, rainwater harvesting. If you look pre-colonial times, people were managing their water collectively. They would divert their, like in this case also, we had this extensive irrigation canal system. People were modifying the bunds. They would allocate water serially, this, that. There was a lot of managing of water, sharing of water, etc., and a whole understanding of how to do this. But after independence, it becomes a state subject. Irrigation is a state subject, and people are separated from something that they've always managed. So similarly, you take the Kumbh Mela, or you take any of these big festivals. Like this town also has some very big, the only war enactment festival in the state. Okay, thousands of people come, and you wonder, how do they manage? Who is organizing this? It seems like amazing, and there have been no disasters, no issue, no stampedes, nothing. How is this managed? Food, sanitation, they manage waste. How do they manage? And you start realizing that actually there is an organization capacity when they know clearly that it's their realm. But these realms, like of planning, water, many of these things have been divorced from people. And we see it as an expert practice. And I think that's where there has to be change.
I think bureaucracy and the government, they are working in isolation rather than in a comprehensive manner. Is that what you want to say?
I think working, not in this case. But usually what happens is in planning, we're trying to gather a lot of data, and often departments are very cagey about their data. They will not share, right? That's of course a problem. So there are issues like that. We are not able to totally bring all the data on board and really plan comprehensively. There are huge gaps. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, just yesterday, I was listening to somebody from Denmark, a planner from Denmark, who said that all their data is out there. Anyone is welcome to use that data, So one question I had, Samprikta, should I look at the chat or should I look at what's the order? Is there something?
Ma'am, there is no specific order.
Okay. So there are two questions here. How should the urban local bodies raise funds to develop reservations? Okay. And then there is another one of why are we still lacking in land allocation policy as per the organic growth of the settlement, and how we can do it in an efficient way so that the context of Indian cities should be addressed while planning future urban settlements. Okay. So one thing about reservations, the fund to develop reservations. So it's kind of interesting. There are no easy answers on this. It's earlier in the older plans you had land acquisition, right? People would just acquire land, didn't work at all. So very quickly then it went to incentives. That is, you give extra development rights to, that's what in Mumbai they're doing. You give extra development rights to a private owner and you say, look, give us at least 40% or at least 60% of that land. And on the 40%, you build all your potential. Whatever you had on the full area, you please develop it on the rest of it, so then you don't suffer. But in a case like a garden where the whole land is reserved, what do you do? So then they have come up with these mechanisms of transfer of development rights. You allow that person to transfer to some other area, etc. So there are issues in all of that, in all of those things. But TDR, transfer of development rights, is an old, very old. It evolved in New York for heritage and agricultural lands which you want to conserve in order to help those people not lose money and their development potential they were given this chance to build elsewhere. So this is an old way of deciding, of helping or conservation by allowing this transfer of the potential of development of that property to some other place. What we have found to the Mumbai experience is you also have to control very closely where you want to build. Where should that extra density come? Where should that extra growth happen? That in Mumbai has been left open, which means that many places have got densified, and the extent of that extra incentive has been used in an unplannerly way, I would say. The tool has moved from a planning tool to a fiscal tool to generate money for the urban local body. So there are issues there. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And there was this, what was the other thing? It was, since there is a lack of land allocation, I didn't really understand that question. Who's written this? Deepak. What do you mean?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, in the current context of we are planning cities and the urbanism in that way. So, as per the studies and as far as I understood, so the allocation of land, the policies that we are actually working on for the land allocation, either it is industrial area or residential areas or like green spaces. So, as per the organic growth of the city, which is the context of Indian cities and the small shelters, which or the hamlets, which develops later. So why we are not considering that organic growth and developing
Doing
policy in
something
that?
about it, right? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Okay. So the
Yes,
thing
yes,
is, I think there's been a shift in policy. So till the 60s, in the early 60s, you had a policy where you would set aside land for housing. See, essentially what is happening is you have a lot of people coming in from outside the city. They're either displaced due to a development project, because I don't know if you know this, but the extent of displacement that our development projects have happened in the years since independence, huge numbers, like 60 million or something. So you'll have people who have lost their lands and who are coming into the cities. Now they don't have access to property and they don't have access to land. So how do you provide that access to property? I think you have to put aside some land. Government has to put aside some land for housing, right? Or we have to create different kinds of rental situations. We have to put aside that land, which we have stopped doing since the 70s. We only offer housing finance. So this is a big issue. And till we change that policy, where now the latest policy is we want the market to provide housing for the poorest people. That means 30 to 40% of all our cities have people who cannot afford or cannot access land in our property in our cities, and we are not doing anything about it. We are following certain like either policies which are instituted by the World Bank or by some other consult like international think tanks, etc. And we are following those policies which really are at odds with our situation, because how will you provide for that bottom 30% who cannot access housing in the market at market rate? It's a big issue, and unfortunately planning toes the government line. So whatever is the government policy is what the government plan is what the plan will do. So we are not land banking. We are not having any of these schemes to address that bottom half. That's the problem. Okay, so there's Jui. I hope I've answered your question, Deepak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, hi, ma'am. So yeah, my question was just that. So you said that local area planning has been like attempted in other places also, like Mumbai or Delhi, or yeah, it has been attempted there. But what do you think are the main reasons, as per your experience, or the main challenges that something like LAP takes off in Kerala but does not take off in Mumbai?
It hasn't taken off in Kerala. We had to really.
Yeah, but then
so
yeah,
I do agree. Yeah. So the thing is that I would say that of course Kerala has a very strong, because of the Janakiya Asutarnam, the People's Planning Campaign, there is already a mindset, plus there's a very high literacy, etc. Participation, is very strong in Kerala in that sense. They have had now since 96, they've been doing participatory budgeting. In one sense, not exactly participatory budgeting, but they have been involved in deciding what finances to use where at the local level. The spatialization of that has not happened. So that's a failure. What we were trying to do in IDDP, they have tried it, and it's a phenomenal model, and this IDDP 2003 column model was put up for the PM's award. It is also taught in all the planning schools. But unfortunately, in Kerala itself, I think it has, right now, town planning is, the town planning department has ceased to exist. It has been subsumed under the local self-government ministry. And it is housed only within each of the municipalities. So it's, though actually it cannot be only a local body function. You also need an overarching state kind of spatial policy, So that's one. Why has it? So in Delhi, it's very unfortunate. Delhi was actually one of the pioneers. So in the 2021 master plan, that is between 11 to 21, we had 33 wards taken up as a pilot for local area plans. The plans were prepared. Consultants were appointed, plans were prepared. And then it fell within the governance stools. Should DDA look at it? Or should Delhi municipality be in charge? That's where it failed. And it could have easily been resolved. Whoever gave out the consultancy, which came out of the plan, it should have been DDA. Because the municipality doesn't have the capacity to actually monitor that or manage that, So it could have very easily been, because these were all prepared by planners and architects, been managed and then maybe handed over through a process. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I think because at the ward level, the municipal councillors were involved. Somehow people started feeling, DDA maybe started feeling it's a councillor area or something,
And about Mumbai?
So in Mumbai, what happened was, so I've been involved in the Goa plan. I've been involved in the Mumbai, where we said that this. So Mumbai case is quite crazy, right? At what level we have 1 million population. So it's not a you can't say ward. It has to be. So we were talking about slums we were talking about local area plans for, say, a slum, an informal settlement. And we said the only way you can bring a transformation is to do that detailed plan. Right. So we tried that. We proposed that, and there were sections in the MRTP Act that allowed us to do that. But unfortunately for us, unfortunately for Mumbai, the plan that we worked on was scrapped 2 weeks after it was published. And then the new plan that was given by a commissioner and passed, the old plan was called earlier EDDP, the earlier development plan. And the later one was called revised sanction development plan or something, RDDP. Anyway, so the thing is that that was done, in that they did not take the LOP. It meant more work, it meant a bigger process. And in fact, the commissioner at that time was very much in favor of actually instituting a huge cell to implement the LAPs and hiring 100 planners. That was the vision. Didn't happen.
So it's actually governance that it's
Failed.
at the governance level, right?
Yes, but also it did not go through the final next round of detailing. See, I think it needs a lot of work. Like we saw in the Chittoor case, it's an intense work that we did. And it's a lot. In fact, one thing which is failing in all our cities is that we don't have urban design kind of work happening at finer scale. So you don't get a good quality urban environment. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. So anything else, any comments, any questions? I mean, I couldn't see any of you, so can you turn on your video so I know who I'm talking to?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
This is Bharathy. I'm sorry, I won't be able to switch on my
No
camera
problem, no
because
problem.
I don't have a camera for the laptop.
Okay.
Ma'am, I just had a question, but before that, it's really good to see an attempt from you and Mr. Jairaj Sundareshan, as you said, where you realized a master plan in the town that you spoke of, because I've never heard of an attempt like this, and then it has been sanctioned by the town planning department. So I just wanted to ask that when the projects were like conceptualized and made into the master plan, is there any project that has currently took off?
No, this is just, this is literally 2 months. We've just finished the suggestion objection phase. The public hearings will happen on 25th. But what we are planning to do is we have the same issue. There is no money, right? So we have 3 projects that we think we should at least showcase. So one thing which I didn't tell you, all the road projects, 27 roads were to be widened, and I think 27 roads were to be widened. In our plan, we got a transport consultant who was with TRL, and with his help, we said this town doesn't have that kind of traffic, and we will do transport. We will actually do management, traffic management, and rerouting, and some junction designs, etc. But we felt that what is most important is to actually get footpaths through the town, because people are walking, a lot of people are walking. So we want to showcase, like, the main road, the main street, we actually want to at least do one to show what is possible. Then similarly, there's a river buffer that we have given a flood zone, right, which could become an active public space, because the town doesn't have any such space, and it has a lot of people who would love to walk, etc. So, so we thought that we should do that. And thirdly, there is also some heritage, like, some buildings that could be converted into cultural space and so on. So we thought that what we are trying to secure now is, in either through schemes, like which exist, some synergies, trying to see if there's a possibility to raise money, maybe have a plan implementation cell. If 2 planners again are, somebody funds it, we are looking out to find out where we can kind of create a plan implementation unit, because we also found that once a DPR is through, there's funding. But even to work on that DPR and create that, there is no money to even have that small team. So, we have been working pro bono, but, and we want to somehow continue to show that this is a possible way forward. We have to see, and ideally we need to, whether it's a smart city or whether it's, what is that, all of these Jal Jeevan missions, etc. There are many ways. Like, one of the things we're thinking of is decentralized sanitation. We had got a professor from IIT, one of my colleagues at IIT, Professor Kalber, was working on a decentralized sanitation system for this town. So all of these schemes are there. Very interesting projects are possible. It's just that a little bit, we're in the process. We won't give up. So,
okay, so there's the whole part A, B, C for the master plan that has been published.
Yes. Because it is synchronized with the ruling municipalities. They had an agenda when they won the election. So it kind of synchronizes with that as well. That was also taken on board and converted into projects, etc.
Sorry, one more follow-up question on the same.
Okay.
When you had the FDGs, you must have definitely needed a set of funding, and the ULPs funded.
When you had, I didn't hear that. When
there was the FGDs conducted with the people.
Yes.
The venue cost and everything, was it given by the ULP, or was it something that the people devoted?
No. So the thing is, see, we had no money, like I said. All the mobilizing was done by the urban local body. We got money from KILA, Kerala Institute of Local Administration, to hire 2 planners, right? We had finally, for that Shilpashala, the 3-day workshop, when we got all our experts in, we needed some money. We needed 3 lakhs. Okay. So for that, because they had to be hosted for 2 days, 3 days, maybe their travel, all of that, that was raised from local philanthropy. That was the only money that came from the town, people who believed in the project. So, what it told us is, we were 2 experts who were kind of leading this. There were 15 others who contributed in different ways. There was one person who was from the town, but lives, someone who lives in Bangalore, who was anchoring, like acted like a CEO for this project. He would coordinate between the municipality and us. And then we reached out to all our contacts. So, we reached out to institutions. So NIT Calicut, we had a professor who came with our students. We had our own, from IIT, we had Professor Kalber and his students, PhD students who came and mapped stuff. We had local architecture colleges and their students who helped. We had the geography professor. So we reached out to a lot of people who contributed. Yeah, but we've not paid. We were not out of pocket. We just didn't take a pay for this.
It's a great initiative.
Yeah.
Really. Thank you.
Okay. And we're writing about it now. We got invited to write on a decolonial practice. So we are writing for an edited volume right now. So that's a nice bonus. So yeah, I hope people know about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess there's a raised hand by Ashish Kelkatji. If you have any questions.
Is there? Ashish, sorry, I didn't see.
Sorry, just a short question. You have mentioned that there is a tremendous gap in the sense of public participation in Indian planning. So is there any document which has been created as to how the public participation should be conducted? And what are the ethical considerations about it? All these.
The thing is, so most people see planning as a expert practice. In the West, it has gone through a very different process, participatory process. There is, it's also project driven. Like if a project is announced, then there's a whole process. In our city, in our country, we find it, we don't have that bandwidth even. Luckily, in the Mumbai plan, and now recently, the Delhi plan, maybe Delhi, there was a campaign. So there have been instances where in big cities, there are NGOs and civil society activists civil society organizations who have mobilized people to engage with the plan. Luckily for us, in the Mumbai case, we had I was part of the consultant team on that. A French consultancy got the project. What had happened was that the public participation was instituted in three stages. So first, when the existing land use was done, for the first time in India's history, it was put up on the website. So people could look at it and check for inconsistencies. It also was the reason why they cited the errors, which are not too many for a city with the complexity that we had. They said that if you had these errors, it's you've got a bad plan. Not true, but anyway. So they used that later as a reason to say that you didn't do a good plan. But actually we put it out so that whatever, there were vacant lands. We had captured it as vacant lands because we didn't know that it was fish drying yards. It was during the monsoon that the survey happened. So there was no fish drying. We saw it as an open land. Now things like that were seen as errors. There were errors that were corrected. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is there were three stages. So one option is, like I showed you, in the regional plan, you allow the local bodies to come up with their own plans with some guidance. It does need some expert intervention to get the ideas, to take it forward, to understand that there is a local wisdom. Let's understand local practice and then bring it in, yeah, so I would say 3 stages minimum. Like first you go to them, understand, not just an existing land use, but the idea is what is it that you really want to change. And so in Mumbai, we saw this, that we had, because the commissioner was very, very keen, Mr. Sitaram Kunte, we had this a long process of engagement on every sector. And 101 NGOs participated, and all of that was recorded. And those suggestions which came actually made it into the plan. We tried very consciously to bring it into the plan. I thought it was a great process, that you need that engagement. You need to give that time, and it's not wasteful, because that's the only way you can really know your cities. As planners, we will have one. How can you understand you? And most of the time we come from such elitist spaces, we are all educated, upper, we are privileged. So there is no way we can understand what the lives of all those people in the informal settlements mean. And unless you understand that, and I think we are also often thinking of all of these people as encroachers. And I think that's a problem, because if you see them as people who are either through your own developmental activities been thrown out, or who are coming here in search of work, and you have to provide them that opportunity, so that because they are your own citizens and they're not outsiders. So I think there has to be a change. So yeah,
Thank you.
there is no process. There is nothing written up on this. We tend to look to the West and look at this radical. I mean, there's a lot of writing, but the whole planning practice is not in that modernist old style. And so we don't. I think we can't just look West. The bottom line is we can't look West. We have to. And last thing that I would like to say is that our entire practice of urban planning also is something that has come from a colonial heritage. So we have, and nothing in the planning education here is making us look at our own practices. We have settlements which have lived here for years, know how to manage the land, know how to manage the water, and so on. So there is a need to look and learn from your own context first. So which is what, in Chittoor tells us. You have a rainwater harvesting system which dates back to the Sangam era, which is continuing. First, start there. That's something that you need to recognize. In the existing master plan that the department provided, they had said you need to conserve just 10 large ponds. They're not recognized that this is a cascading system of water bodies, that, it's a system, because they have not been ever trained, and they have not learned that this is something that, that understanding was not there. So I would say, for all of you who come from whatever backgrounds, first of all, that expert cap is a problem, because there's a lot of traditional knowledge. So we have to be a little humble, and we have to learn. There's a lot of wonderful stuff in our own country and in our own context that we need to just understand, and then we can, kind of allow it to flourish. Okay. Thank you. I've gone over, but sorry about that. Shall we close then?
Yes, ma'am. I think we can move on and close the session.
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure listening to you. We hope we collaborate with you in future events as well.
Sure. Thank you. And goodbye, everyone. Good night.
Thank you once again. As we come to the end of day 3 of UPLGYF Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program, I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our expert for the day 3 session, Professor Malini Krishnankutty ji, for taking out her valuable time and allowing us to learn from this online certificate training program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you on October 24 at 6 p.m. for our day 4 of the certification course by distinguished expert Professor N C Narayanan and Mr. UNhale ji, followed by research essay framework discussion. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you so much.